That the learning should be there fu'at. Tanya Mat Magalit. When we enter into Parshat Yitro, after 4,000 years of anticipating and waiting, not only to release ourselves from negative, but to have a book that shows that we have a relationship that's constant with God. And the two most important questions in this parsha is, why did God wait for 4,000 years? How did Hashem, if he had such a great present, why didn't he just give it immediately? When we have something special, something unique, something great, we share it, we give it. But Hashem waited and waited and waited. But the second question is the introduction to Ma'amad Har Sinai. The parsha opens up and says, Vayishma Yitro Kohen Midyan Choten Moshe Et Kol Asher Asa Elohim LeMoshe UleYisrael Amo Ki Hotzi Adonai Et Yisrael MiMitzrayim. And any of us who have a little bit of the ability to understand Matan Torah, why is Yitro the introduction? I could have thought of Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. What was it about Yitro that was the introduction to receiving the greatest present in the world? In order to understand these two questions, just want to learn one Rashi on this last pasuk and try and see through Chassidut, what is it that made this story so special? So the pasuk says that Yitro heard that Hashem took out the Jewish people out of Egypt. And so Rashi says, Ma shmu'a shama v'ba. Rashi asks an amazing question. What caused Yitro to transform himself? Yitro had a good life. He was out there in Midian. He was a religious leader. He had possessions. What suddenly causes Yitro to change? Ma shmu'a shama v'ba. Why does Yitro wake up one morning and say, I want my life to be different. I want my relationship to be different. And Rashi answers, Ma shmu'a shama v'ba, Kri'at Yamsuf v'milchemet Amalek. What story transforms Yitro? The story of Kri'at Yamsuf and the war against Amalek. But if we go back to the pasuk said, Vayishma Yitro ki hotzi Hashem et Yisrael mimitzrayim. The Torah explicitly says that he heard the idea of Yetziat Mitzrayim. So why does Rashi ask, Mashmu Ashama Veba? The Torah just said, Vayishma Yitro, Ki Yotzi Hashem et Yisrael Mitzrayim. And suddenly Rashi has this crazy question. What did he hear? Mashmu Ashama Veba. Not only is the question of Rashi difficult, but the answer is even more difficult. The Torah said, Ki Yotzi Hashem et Yisrael mi Mitzrayim. Yetziat Mitzrayim. And then Rashi wakes up and says, no, he heard Kriyat Yamsuf and Milchemet Amalek. So the two questions on Rashi are, why do you ask what he heard when the Torah says what he heard? And why do you change? The Torah said Yetziat Mitzrayim. And you come and say that he heard Kriyat Yamsuf and Milchemet Amalek. So in the year 1940, in the Warsaw Ghetto, the Piaseczner Rebbe asks both those questions. And he answers one answer for both questions. Ma shmu'a shama v'ba. Lama hutzrach lavo. Ki haya yechol lashevet bebeito. Rashi understands that what caused Yitro to choose God was Yetziat Mitzrayim. Because that's what the Torah says. Vayishma Yitro ki yotzi Hashem et Yisrael mi Mitzrayim. So what made him understand the idea of God was Yetziat Mitzrayim. But Rashi asks, not what did he hear? Ma shmu'a shama v'ba. What caused him not just to know the idea of Judaism? What caused him to leave his house, his comfort, and walk out into a hot, difficult, and dangerous desert? Rashi doesn't want to know, why does someone choose God? Rashi wants to know the word v'ba. What makes someone change not just the idea, but the lifestyle? Why does he leave the bayit and go to the midbar? Why does he leave the comfort and go to the challenge? Why does he leave the easy and go to the difficult? Why does he live differently and not just think differently? And that, the answer, is Kriyat Yamsuf and Milchemet Amalek. Because Yetziat Mitzrayim taught us the greatness of God, which is good for the beginning. But Milchemet Amalek taught us that the greatest challenge is not knowing the idea, but questioning the implication of the idea. The idea is Yetziat Mitzrayim, and that's good and that's great. But the implication is that you're willing to change a lifestyle. We all know we don't want to be lazy. We all know we want to be happy. We all know we want to be the greatest husbands and wives and students. We all have the idea. But the introduction to Ma'amad Har Sinai is that the idea is irrelevant if you cannot understand the way to imply. And so Kriyat Yamsuf and Milchemet Amalek are the challenge of the day after the great idea. Yeah, we left Mitzrayim, but the day later after Kriyat Yamsuf, we have to live. We have to challenge ourselves not just to think about God, but to relate the idea. That is Milchemet Amalek. Amalek comes and says, so many people know great ideas, but how many people can imply? How many people could not just have the great realization, but that they internalize it so deeply that they could imply it everywhere and all the time. Just to continue this idea, every day in davening we say Kriyat Shema. The Yerushalmi explains in Masechet Bracha Perek Aleph, Halacha Daled, why do we read Kriyat Shema every day? So the Gemara says in the Yerushalmi, Rabbi Levi Amar mipnei she'aseret hadibrot klulin bahem. Why do we say Kriyat Shema every day? Because we're reliving Har Sinai. So when I learned this for the first time, I had an obvious question. If when we say Kriyat Shema, we're really saying Aseret HaDibrot, we're saying Ma'amad Har Sinai, then just say Ma'amad Har Sinai. Why are we saying Kriyat Shema instead of Har Sinai? And so the Sifri says that Kriyat Shema is something that Har Sinai doesn't. Har Sinai says you should love Hashem. Har Sinai says you should keep Shabbat. Har Sinai shows you the great concept. But look how deep this Sifri is. Sifri in Dvarim, Piska Lamed Gimel, says, Eini yodea keitzad, Eini yodea keitzad, Eini yodea keitzad oavim et hamakom. What's unique about Kriyat Shema is that we open up and we say, Ve'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha, like we said at Har Sinai, but what's the next sentence? V'shochvecha, v'kumecha, v'lechtecha baderech, v'shivtecha b'veitecha, al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha. The second part of Kriyat Shema says, what's greater? The ma'amad of Har Sinai that teaches you the concept, or Kriyat Shema that brings it down to what does it mean? And Kriyat Shema is what we keep daily. Because the deeper message is not can you reveal the concept of Ve'ahavta. We all want to love. But do you know what it means to love? We all have great dreams, but what are you paying for it? What are you doing for it? And so if we go back to the first two questions, why did Hashem wait for 4,000 years? Because to teach an idea takes 1 minute. But to imply an idea could take a lifetime. If the goal of Har Sinai was the idea of Hashem speaking to the world, it would have happened at the first moment. But Har Sinai was so much deeper. Har Sinai said that the true challenge is, are you ready to imply? Are you ready to relate the idea? Are you ready to live by your dream or just think about your dream? And that takes 4,000 years. And the introduction to Har Sinai is Yitro. Because what it means that Yitro came is that Yitro realized that the Torah belongs not just to the people who God thinks are great, but the people who demand greatness. Yitro says, I'm so far away, but I'm really not that far if I demand myself to live, to go out to the desert. Mashmu'a shama veba. Yitro taught that the greatest gate into Torah is not the concepts and not the ideas, but the ability to demand, to relate the idea, imply it, practice, and actualize the dream. My greatest dream is to be a great father and to love my children. And so I was walking with my Oriatan when he was 2 years old. And he was in the stroller and I'm pushing him forward. And suddenly a random guy on the street walks over. And he says to me, "Are you sick?" And I didn't know the guy. I said, "I'm sorry, I'm not that sick. Like, I'm okay. It's fine." No, are you sick? I got a little scared. I'm not sick. I'm okay. And he looks me straight in the eye and he says, "What's in front of you?" And I said, "My child." So he said, "Oh, you want to be a good father?" I said, "It's my dream. Like, that's what I've been thinking about since I'm 4 years old." "So why do you have a cell phone in your hand? Why are you talking to someone else when your dream is right there?" "Yeah, I could talk forever about being a great father." "What's the implication? Am I on my phone or am I with my child? Am I speaking about the idea of loving a child or am I realizing that it's right there? Do I demand the love or could I just talk about it?" In my bracha this Shabbat, when we receive the idea of the Torah, we recognize where it comes in history. We realize that it was in the desert, and that when it was in the desert, it said to us, can you recognize that you can use the Torah even in a place of the desert? Do you realize that the Torah is so great, not because of what you speak about, or dream about, or think about, but because it could deal with the desert, and it could bring Yitro back home, and it can make you recognize that the biggest way to accomplish a dream, and the greatest way to recognize the beauty of Torah, is to understand that it's the only religion that says that the idea is just the beginning. That's the beginning, that's Yetziat Mitzrayim, it's the idea. But the greater level is what you do with the idea. And we should all have the great quality to know that we have the most beautiful ideas. But do we take the time to live by them and to demand them and to pay for them and to use them? And that's exactly Kriyat Shema that we say every day. You said V'ahavta et Hashem, second part, now, B'shivtecha, b'veitecha, b'lechtecha, b'derech. And what made Har Sinai last was when we asked ourselves what it means practically, and not only what it means conceptually. Shabbat Shalom.